Make me feel a bit better. If I just laugh a bit, because I kind of just relax a bit. Would you laugh with me?
Yeah.
Yeah? Maybe a bit deeper? Maybe a bit louder? Right, how to be an evil scientist. First of all, trick them into doing an evil laugh. Done. You also need one of these. It's very important that you have the right outfit when you're evil. So why am I here? Why am I evil standing in front of you? So I don't know, anybody here heard of the organisation I work for, Armour Cooney? Anybody at all? No. We're relatively new, 7 years old. We've gone through some rapid growth over the last 12 months. We are a consultancy. We do consult, but we also build software, and we also provide training for people. These are kind of just a list of some of the people that we're working with currently. So, second step of being an evil scientist, you have to have an evil name. Do you all have first names? Good, okay, that's good. Do you all have second names? Yeah? Okay, great. So with your first name, I'd like you to take your initial, and I'd like to remember which this is. Okay, you all memorized? Yeah? Anybody need a couple more minutes, like 15, 20 minutes? No, okay. And your surname? Okay. Have you all done this? You're all ready to go? Good. You'll need to keep that up here. You're going to need that later. So I've got your evil name. Brilliant. Right. The third step of being evil is we need to be in it together. We've got to be evil together. So I need to know what's the most evil thing that you have ever done. I'm going to tell you first my most evil thing. This is Billy. She is a consultant for Armour Cooney. She describes herself as quite tall. She's still alive, don't worry, I'm not going to kind of like admit that something tragic's happened to her. She says she help people use best practices. Her favourite animal is a capybara. It's basically like a giant, like gerbil, I think, or like a giant guinea pig. It's weird, but each to their own. I stole this talk from her, and I didn't say thank you, and that is really evil. Also, if you don't think that's evil enough, once upon a time, I ate a whole packet of party ring biscuits and blamed them on my twin sisters. That's also evil. So what I'd like you to do now is, person next to you, introduce yourself with your new name, of course, and tell them what's the most evil thing that you've done. Off you go. That's enough boasting. Does anybody have a story they want to share? Hello, what's your evil name?
Dark Shadow.
Welcome, Dark Shadow. Thank you very much for joining us.
I went downstairs. I was skiing in a resort in Italy last year, and my little girl was skiing the same resort, the same hotel. So I went to collect some food from outside, from a dog, and I left outside his bedroom.
So, Michael, if you're watching, she's over there. Thank you. Anybody else got anything they'd like to share? Over the back, sir.
I'm the evil master.
Yeah.
I was told you to. So I was working in a factory turnaround in Coventry with a computer illiterate factory manager. And the air was a bit stressed, so we wanted to break the ice. So I used autocorrect. So every time he typed his name, the letters at the start, it changed it to Farty Pants instead of his real name. And he retyped his name about 15 times before screaming, "I'm going anything mad," and everyone started laughing.
Brilliant. I think that deserves a round of applause. In fact, to be fair, Michael Gove also deserves a round of applause as well. Great, so we know evil things about each other. So if any one of us gets caught, we're not going to grasp on the others because we've all got something to lose. Next thing you need to know is the rules that every single evil scientist must follow. Now, these are probably more generic to just any arch villain, but evil scientists very much need to know them. So, never get caught monologuing. Obviously, I'm the exception because I've got the coat on, but in normal circumstances, never get caught monologuing. Always try and splice stuff together. DNA, body parts, those sort of things. It's very important that you try and do that as much as you possibly can. Always have lots and lots of evil schemes. You never know if there's going to be a sequel in the series of movies. Always start small. So if you're planning on blowing up the world, maybe start with somewhere like Kidderminster first, just to kind of give it practice. Can we wipe Kidderminster off the planet? Always have an arch enemy. Know who they are inside out and know their weaknesses. Very important. Always have an escape plan. Always measure everything. Now, it's more of a science thing than an evil thing, but we are evil scientists, so we have to kind of pay homage to that side of our world. Never wear capes, mainly because apparently this season they're going to be in fashion, and we don't want to be in fashion. And always boast. Right? There's absolutely no point in being evil and hiding under a bushel. You've got to be proud of your evil deeds. Okay? Are we all happy with the evil rules? There will be a test at the end.
It's a startup suggestion for startups.
Suggestions for startups?
Yeah, it looks like the good way of acting in a startup.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to, this is maybe a beginner's guide to startups. Maybe we could retitle the talk next time. So you know your arch enemies. You need only to describe them. Who are they? Who here works in software? Who builds software or is responsible for teams or stuff like this? So you may have come across some of these. It's probably also in the general wider business as well that you find these things. The waiting around kid, Captain Defect, very vicious, heroic person. General heroics, the crimson handoff, gold-plated features girl, Mr. Unneeded Process. Do you recognise these as part of your day-to-day world? El manual work, awful comms boy, knowledge drain man. The person that decides just to walk out with all the things inside their head. Constance task switching, the relearner, rework, partially completed work woman, Dr. Overly Complex Solutions, the siloed worker, and poor visibility man. And I call this the team dysfunction, but this is the worst of them all. Have you come across this superhero? 10X man? Have you seen this? You mentioned startups, you're absolutely right, but he doesn't just exist in startups, or she doesn't, or they're all over the place. But if you are a startup, or anybody else, if you come across this breed of engineers, grab them, the 10X engineer, they're amazing. They increase the odds of your startup success significantly. How do you spot one? Now, there are 11 steps to spotting one. I'm not going to go through each one, but I'm just going to point out some salient things. They think meetings are a waste of time, so they just don't bother attending. They don't find out whether or not the meeting is going to be important. They just don't bother turning up. They tend to work abnormal hours, so they don't work with other people. They'll just work and do their own thing. Now, this is a weird one. I don't know why the keyboards such as A, I, F, and X are usually worn out. If X, I don't know. And I don't know why email senders normally have A, S, and E. I don't know. Anyway, they know every single line of code that goes into production. They're amazing. We know with the QA people that if they find, or the support people, if they find an issue, they go direct to type 10X person, and wow. They full stack. They know everything about APIs, databases. They know they can convert thoughts into code in their minds. They write code in the same ease that they write English or whatever their native language is. They take no breaks, there's no pause, they're just there, they can read your mind, they're amazing. Blah, 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 blah. If you come across them, hold on to them, celebrate them, or destroy them. Right, so, we've got the evil laugh, we all know that, right? We've got our evil names, we know about evil things we've ever done. we've got the rules, we know our enemies. So welcome, finally welcome to SEAM, to the scarily evil alchemy meetup. My name is the Mad Werewolf. It's not really a sciencey name, but fuck it, it's my name now. So, ladies and gentlemen, the story I'm about to tell you is absolutely true. Absolutely true. Only the names have been changed to protect the innocent, and maybe some of the facts. So, does anybody here work for this organisation, for Cat Paw Incorporated? No, good, because I made it up, and well, actually Billy made it up, and if you did, it'd be really awkward. So, fictional company doesn't exist. This is Dastardly Ashley. Do you know what the most evil thing that she's ever done is? Somebody was driving too close behind her, and she slowed down to 10 miles an hour below the speed limit just to really annoy them. How evil is that? Yeah, no. She's a team lead within Cat Paws Incorporated. She has a team of business analysts, user experience people, software developers, engineers, whatever you want to, whatever your imagination takes you to do that. And Ashley wants to improve the way that her team works. Ashley goes to a conference. She learns about pair programming. Are you familiar with the pair programming? Yes, no? Pair programming is, as developers, you sit together, or people you sit together, you have a monitor each, keyboard each, a mouse each, but you share the same computer until you kind of have mirrored screens, and you swap between a navigator and a driver, and you're kind of constantly switching. So you've all got one task. You've got one task to do between the two of you, and one person's talking and the other person's coding. That essentially sums up pair programming. It's a very good way of getting rid of that kind of that bus factor, that siloed mentality of developers. She learned about pipelines, so the ability to kind of automate your deployments. You put your code, chunk it up, write automated tests around it, and have that kind of like again and again repeatedly go through production, producing dashboards and metrics and stats and all those good stuff. And she learned about test-driven development, about breaking your code down, writing your tests first, like the smallest bit of code that you can possibly write as a test, running that, having it fail, write the code that passes the test, refactoring, blah, blah, blah. So the kind of good agile, extreme programming best practices for programming. She learned that about her teams. And she went back to her team and she said, I've learned about this great stuff. I went to a conference. It's amazing. Let's do it. And her team said, OK, we'll give it a go. Let's give it a go. And she worked with her team. She trusted them. She empowered them. And guess what? It was a success. It worked. Her team were pairing. They had pipelines. They were testing. They were doing lots of really good, cool stuff. And it's like, wow, amazing! I can put some glasses on and be cool. Maybe I've got bonuses. That's great stuff. I get rewarded. 10x Men was being defeated. Like, yes, finally, we're getting rid of him. So this is Sam, and this is Alex. What's Sam's evil name? I don't know. You need to tell me. Sorry?
She just got a stroke.
You got a stroke? Oh, I think she's kind of doing that kind of like funny emoji. What's her evil name? Anybody?
The single-eyed lady.
The seagull-eyed.
Single-eyed lady.
The single-eyed lady, Sam. I'm not going to remember this. And Alex's evil name? This shouldn't be hard.
Yeah,
Really shouldn't be that hard. Nasty Alex. I was hoping I'd get a bit more from you, a bit more kind of like...
Constipation man.
Constipation man, there we go, right. They're evil too, they're really, really evil. And they approached, they have their own teams, they're the similar sort of role to Ashley, and they approached her and said, we heard what you're doing with these great techniques, come and help us do it, we want to do it as well. And she said, yeah, of course, I've got my shades on, I'm cool, I'll help you. But the power had gone to her head. She would become a megalomaniac, and she said, you can only do it if you do it my way. You can use, I will grant you access to my developers to teach you all the good stuff. I will grant you access to everything you need, but you've got to follow my way. And they did. Guess what? It didn't work. So they all got sent. Well, actually, they were thwarted by superheroes at every turn. They were caught, and they were sent to jail. In fact, it's the worst kind of jail. It's PMO jail. Terrible, terrible jail. But thankfully, Ashley had an escape plan, because she remembered always have an escape plan. I'm not saying how she escaped, but there was a poster of Kent Beck in her cell, and I'm not saying anything more than that. You've probably seen this quote before. Millions and millions of times it's probably used and abused everywhere that you go. What Ashley didn't recognise is the future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Every team is different. So we go into lots of organisations and we see, we talk to people and say, we want to be like this. And you go and you see, well, that team's already doing this. What's stopping every other team around you from being like that? Why are they able to do that and not this? And it's because every team is different. So Cat Paw Incorporated need to go back to the drawing board and say, well, if we're going to defeat the superheroes, how are we going to do this? How are we going to roll out these good best practices, new techniques to allow us to do that? How are we going to change? How are we going to evolve? So Alex and Sam went to Ashley and said, okay, forget about pair programming, forget about test-driven development, forget about pipelines. Go back even earlier in time. What happened before that? Before you started, why did you decide that you needed these things? What was the thing that made you do it? She said, good point. And she thought back to her first few weeks. She said, when I first went into the team, I didn't monologue. I remembered, don't monologue. I just listened. I observed. I just saw what's going on. What's the relationships like between the people in the team? Or who's doing the work? Who's saying they're going to do the work and don't do it and pass it on to somebody else? All that kind of stuff. I looked and said, what's the vision? What's the ambition? What are we trying to achieve? And what's our current reality actually like? And what are the pain points? What are the gaps in between those? I worked out the problems, and I thought, these are some potential solutions. And that's when I went to the conference, and that's when I saw these things. I found these things at the conference and brought them back after I already knew what my problems were. And then I tried them out one by one, not sent all my team off on training and then brought them back and go, try it. We tried them out together. We learned together. We shared in real world situations. And then we also looked back as a team, and we looked back and we saw which bits worked, which didn't. Should we continue? Should we pivot? Should we stop? And we just iteratively, basically, we experimented. And Alex and Sam said, what if we do that? What if we take an iterative experimental approach to our teams? How does that look like? What does that look like? How do we do that? How do you even start? So what did Ashley know about teams already? Teams contain this, an individual. And what's so special about individuals? They're all individual. They're all unique snowflakes. They are all individual. They have their own aspirations, their dreams. They have professional ambitions, personal ambitions. They have things that drain them. They have things that recharge them. They like standing in front of people. They don't like standing in front of people. They do all this kind of stuff. They're unique, right? They're individual. So knowing that is a unit of the team is very, very important. They are not resource. They are people. The next bit is, how do they interact with each other? How do they communicate? How do they respect each other? What's their kind of interpersonal relationships like? How do they work? So that's the next part of teams. And then, so that's the people aspect. The tools And the processes are also very important in all of this, but they're as equally important as the people. Quite often, you go to places and they say, once we upgrade to the next version of Java, we're going to be so much faster. Or if we move our version control system from some RTC to Git, that's going to make things amazing. Or installing Jira, we will be digital, it's going to be fantastic. Maybe you'll be lucky, but you've got to focus on all three things working in absolute harmony to make it work. Also, what's the ecosystem around the team like? What are the stakeholders like? Where did the work come from? Where did it go to? What's upstream? What's downstream? All those kind of like the nuances and subtleties of each individual team, even within organizations where they try and think that they're cookie cutter, they're not. There's history and heritage through the whole organization. So, evil scientist rules. Never get caught monologuing. Always try and splice things together. Always have lots of evil schemes. Always start with something small. Always measure everything. Well, we're talking about try and empathize, synthesize, ideate, prototype, test. We're actually really talking about design thinking in this area. How do we apply design thinking to helping teams improve and transform and just become better people? So how do we empathize? How did Ashley do it? Exercise called stakeholder mapping. Have you ever used stakeholder mapping? Have come across it as a thing? It's an interesting technique where you're able to kind of put on a quadrant how impactful or how influential are individuals within our sphere, and you can put them on the quadrant. These people up here are high and whatever. What Ashley did was she used that not for the big picture, but to see who does her team actually know exists within their world. Because sometimes you talk to a junior developer, let's say, and they'll be like, my boss, and maybe the person sits next to me, and that's all I know in my world. So doing a stakeholder mapping exercise with the whole team helps them see what's that work like. And then some kind of softer team metrics, things that help measure the culture. So the culture of a team is often, it's the myths and the history and the heritage, the stories that the teams have told. And funnily enough, you can go into organizations and you can work with teams who, the individuals in that team may not have been there right at the very beginning, or may not be there at the crunch point, but they're still somehow bearing those scars, those fears, those doubts, those uncertainties that the team members have just passed on as they joined the team and done that. So it's very important to analyze that and look at those. She looked at the Westrum typology to measure culture, where this is a study that I think Ron Westrum did, looking at how information flow through organisations, especially within kind of health and kind of high risk. And high performing teams are at the performance orientated end of the scale, so they're able to adapt and respond. Pathological, the power orientated, messengers will be shot or told off. But if you fail, you get scapegoats, that kind of stuff. So measuring where the team is on this spectrum and identifying what the areas are and being able to tackle each one of those things and trying to create that kind of blameless, generative environment is very important. Looking at the 5 dysfunctions of a team, a way of measuring the team cohesion, where it's basically a foundation of trust. Are the individuals in the team, did they trust each other? And that's not, if I commit to doing a piece of work, will I have done it? It's more, am I open to say, actually, I don't really know how to do this thing. I've never tried it before, and that's okay. Can we collaborate? Can we work together? And if you have that vulnerability, that trust, you can then have candid debate. You can start to kind of have honest conversations, like adult conversations, which then means you can commit to stuff, which means you can take accountability for things, which ultimately leads to results. So the way this is done is through a survey where you answer some questions, and it comes out with are you red, amber, green? And it's not massively kind of like peer-reviewed scientific, but it's a very good technique to use for teams to help them to start talking about that side of their working life. Especially we found in software teams where they like to focus on how good are we at writing code, not how good are we at collaborating with each other. The other thing she started to look at were these 4 key metrics. So this comes from the State of DevOps reports or DORA, as far as our code is concerned, how fast are we getting out the door? And then once it's out the door, how stable is it? We look at things like lead time for change, so from a code commit into production. So how frequently can we deploy? If the service or application goes down, what's the mean time to recovery for that? And what's the change failure percentage? Or how good is the quality of our code? So all of these things, looking at, using as a baseline, not saying, right, okay, Team A and Team B and Team C, we're going to compare you against each other. No, not at all. It's for a team to be able to track themselves over time. And it's to start, before you even start experimenting with the team, say, where are you today? And every experiment that we run, have we shifted any of these metrics, any of these dials? In the define phase, she started using service blueprints and value stream mapping. Again, not always with the customers, just maybe with the team, just to try and understand, does the team understand their customers? Does the team understand their end-to-end ecosystem? And then you start to bring in the wider organization to say, actually now start to fill in the gaps, where are the blanks, what does work, what doesn't work. Value stream mapping is very useful for mapping through the flow and working out where are the blockages and where should we optimize first. There's no point in, if we decide that the QA process is too slow, piling more developers in, because we need to optimize the QA process, right? That makes sense. So it's knowing what's our end-to-end value stream, what's our end-to-end flow through the system. And then a service health check. So borrowed from Spotify, I'm not talking about Spotify model, because obviously Spotify model is Spotify at a point in time. They've moved on from there, but some of the tools and techniques that they've used are very valuable. The service health check, something along the lines of, based on some criteria that we rate, code quality, let's say, these are good statements, and these are bad statements, and are we kind of thumbs up, thumbs to the side, or thumbs down on these things? Code quality, continuous delivery, architecture, product and process, lean management and monitoring. Those are sort of areas. And the nice thing about this service service health check is that they can be discrete for teams. You can say, right, if you're a team that is more of a specialist team in data science of some sort, you can make your health check fit that. It's not a one-size-fits-nobody rule. Then when it came to the ideate session of what are the problems we're trying to deal with, these techniques are really, really helpful. 1, 2, 4, all. You've heard of it. So it's a really, really interesting technique. It comes from a group of techniques called liberating structures, where quite often when you're asking people for ideas, the loudest person or the person that most people default to will come up with the ideas and everybody goes, and you kind of get that kind of like, that thing where you start people to start to copy and echo each other. With 1, 2, 4, all, the idea is that you sit as an individual, and you write down, what are the 4 or 5 things that I would like to improve, that I would like to change? And then you get together in a pair and you whittle those 4 or 5 ideas, so the 10 ideas which you have in a pair down to 4 or 5, and get to 4 and have more discussion, and then all of you then eventually have a discussion about what are the best ideas. And you can start seeing themes come through. And it means that from the beginning, everyone in the room has skin in the game. Then they're able to kind of go, oh yeah, I had an input into that. I want to get with that. Then that leads to some hypothesis generation, which I'll talk about in the prototype. So in the prototype, we talk about a learning goal and how you want to create this single page, a lightweight thing that just says, right, okay, what are we trying to achieve? When we do this experiment, what are we going to learn? What do we need to learn? What's our riskiest assumption? What's our number 1 priority? When we create the hypothesis, is it falsifiable? Is it a genuine hypothesis, or is it just like, by moving to Git, we're going to be more awesome? Is it specific? Is it causal? And is it relevant? The hypothesis, is it relevant to the learning goal? This can be structured in something like, we believe that achieving this outcome, so we believe that this capability will result in this outcome, and we will know we'll seek success when we've had some sort of uptick. And there's other parts to it. So plan, and I'm talking about a very lightweight, do this, then that, then the other. Time box, we'll only do it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And the interesting thing about that time box is that especially if you're working in software teams and people go, I hate pair programming, I don't like it, I've tried it in my old place, I don't want to do it, no, I don't want to do it. You say, well, let's time box it, let's just give it a go here, let's try it out here. We're only going to do it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and here's the structure around it that says, if it's a success, we know why it's a success. If it's a failure, we know why we're going to stop. You have the fail condition. What happens if our hypothesis is just completely false? We shouldn't do it. And also the early stop. And the early stop is very, very useful for when you go outside of your team. So if you're a team that's been newly launched as a DevOps team, you now own the end-to-end, but you've still got an operations team. And you go, well, we need access to the database, but that's still in the operation team. You're not allowed to do that. And you say, well, as a first experiment, maybe we want access to a single table in the database in production because we're struggling with support queries or whatever that is. The early stop allows you to say, if we bring the database down, that's a really extreme example, then we're just going to completely kill the experiment. We're not going to do it anymore. How am I doing for time? A couple of minutes, right? And then you test and you boast, you share. That's very important. That once we've come up with our experiments, your hypothesis, you then share the success and the failures. Journaling is very important as well. Making sure that you keep a micro journal, like a record of maybe every couple of hours. What are you working on? And then every day, and then every week, and that can then lead into blog posts and more wider talks, perhaps like this one. Measurement. And then when we talk about measurement, we talk about this thing, which is we've come up with the AUX scale of how aware, how willing, how much knowledge, how many skills, how much support do I have around a particular area, and you're able to track the team's understanding of a certain thing. So if you were to say, right, we want to create microservices and we need to know more about domain-driven design, we can rate ourselves before we go in, we can start to learn about it, and then 1 is I have no understanding, and 5 is I invented it, or I'm very good at it. I can move myself across that. We can track the progress of the team over time. So, copying Ashley's first week, they designed an experiment to run with their teammates, and they got to a bit of a dead end. It's all right, because they got to another dead end. But eventually, they managed to get all the way through, and boom! They captured a superhero. Kind of reframing it as an experiment, it gave them the psychological permission to really say, look, this is okay, we're just trying it out, we're just testing it. It's going to be in real world stuff, but we're just testing it out, and we will stop, we will revert. Even when you've got a terrifying boss like Mr. Cat Paws up in the corner there. They allowed them to focus on value. It was about iterating and trying to know where's the end result, and then slowly moving towards that. And it works for your specific team, your context at that day. And it's not just software teams that this works for. This also works for wider technology support teams and everybody else. This allowed them to crush all the opposition. 10x Man is now safely locked away. And they were able to take over the world. Thank you.